So, let's talk about change. Not the kind you find in your couch cushions, unless that change is enough to start a revolution. In which case, check your couch more often. I'm talking about the big stuff, the kind of world-shaking, history-making change that completely rewrites the rulebook. In every generation, there are these incredible individuals who look at the world as it is and say, you know what, this could be better. And they don't just say it, they do something about it. They're the ones who stand up when everyone else is sitting down, who speak out when silence is the safest option. These are the revolutionary leaders, the people who didn't just live in history. They grabbed it by the collar and gave it a good shake. These figures are more than just names in a textbook or statues in a park. They were real people, with doubts and fears. But they possessed a vision so powerful, it became contagious. They inspired millions, not just with grand speeches, but with their actions, their sacrifices, and their unwavering belief in a different future. Think about it. They rallied entire nations, toppled empires, and built new societies from the ground up. They took the impossible and made it inevitable. From the Americas to Africa to Asia, their stories are a testament to the power of a single idea, a single person, to ignite a fire that can reshape the destiny of millions. Today, we're going on a journey to look at some of these titans of transformation. We're going to explore what drove them, how they did it, and the legacies they left behind. Legacies that, for better or worse, we are all living with today. We'll look at the general who became a president, the lawyer who became a saint, the prisoner who became a unifier, and the doctor who became a symbol of rebellion. It's a wild ride through history, so buckle up, because we're about to meet the people who didn't just change the world. They turned it upside down. Alright, let's kick things off in America, the 1700s. The biggest superpower in the world is Great Britain. They've got colonies everywhere, and the American one is getting a little feisty. They're tired of being taxed without having a say in it. You know the feeling, right? It's like your parents making you pay for the Wi-Fi but still setting a password on it and not telling you what it is. It's just not fair. And in the middle of all this frustration, you have this guy, George Washington. He's a tall, imposing figure, a landowner from Virginia, and a military man. He wasn't the loudest voice calling for a fight at first, but when the time came, he was the one everyone looked to lead the army. Now, leading the Continental Army was basically the 18th century version of an impossible startup. They were underfunded, undertrained, and going up against the most professional, well-equipped military force on the planet. Imagine trying to win the World Cup with your local Sunday League team. That was Washington's reality. There were times they were freezing at Valley Forge, with no shoes, no food, and morale was so low you could trip over it. But Washington had this incredible ability to hold it all together. He wasn't just a general, he was the glue. His leadership, his sheer refusal to quit, kept the dream of independence alive through the darkest winters and the most brutal defeats. After 8 long years, the impossible happens. They win. America is free. And this is where Washington does something truly revolutionary. Everyone expects him to become the new king. That's how it worked, right? You win the war, you get the crown. But Washington says, nope, not interested. He voluntarily gives up power and goes back to his farm. This single act was mind-blowing to the world. It set a precedent that power in this new nation belonged to the people, not to one man. And when they called him back to be the first president, he served. And then he walked away again, proving that the country was more important than any single leader. He wasn't just a revolutionary, he was the architect of a republic. Now let's travel across the globe to India, under the rule of the same British Empire. But the revolution here looks completely different. There are no muskets, no cannons, no grand cavalry charges. The leader of this revolution is a small, quiet man in a simple loincloth, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, or as the world would come to know him, Mahatma, the great soul. He was a lawyer, educated in London, who had seen the ugly face of racial discrimination firsthand in South Africa. When he returned to India, he saw his people suffering under the same boot of colonial oppression, and he decided to fight back, but with a weapon no empire was prepared for. His weapon was satyagraha, which translates to truth force or soul force. It was a philosophy of non-violent resistance. Gandhi's idea was radical. You don't fight oppression with more violence because that just feeds the cycle. Instead, you resist with peace, with civil disobedience. You show the world the injustice of the system by peacefully breaking unjust laws and willingly accepting the punishment. It's a strategy that requires immense courage. It's one thing to fight back when someone hits you. It's another thing entirely to stand there, take the blow, and not raise a hand in return, all to prove a point. It was brilliant, and it was infuriating for the British. How do you fight an enemy who refuses to be your enemy? The perfect example of this was the Salt March in 1930. The British had a law that made it illegal for Indians to collect or sell their own salt. They had to buy it from the British, who slapped a heavy tax on it. Salt! The most basic necessity of life. So Gandhi decided to walk 240 miles to the sea to make his own salt in defiance of the law. He started with a few dozen followers, but by the time he reached the coast, he was leading a crowd of tens of thousands. The world watched as this peaceful army marched to the sea. This simple act exposed the absurdity and cruelty of British rule to the entire planet. It was a pinch of salt that shook an empire to its core and inspired a nation to peacefully demand its freedom. From India, we journeyed down to the southern tip of Africa, to South Africa, a country torn apart by one of the most brutal systems of racial segregation ever devised, apartheid. It was a system where the color of your skin determined everything. Where you could live, what job you could have, who you could love. It was a system designed to crush the human spirit. But in the face of that crushing pressure, a young lawyer named Nelson Mandela rose to become a symbol of resistance. He was charismatic, intelligent, and he joined the African National Congress, or ANC, to fight for the rights of the black majority. At first, the ANC followed Gandhi's path of non-violent protest. They organized boycotts, strikes, and demonstrations. But the government responded with pure violence, like the Sharpeville massacre, where police gunned down peaceful protesters. It was at this point that Mandela and the ANC felt they had no choice but to change tactics. They believed that non-violence wasn't working against a state that was so willing to be violent. So, they formed an armed wing, Umkhonto we Sizwe, which means Spear of the Nation, and began acts of sabotage against government infrastructure. It was a controversial and difficult decision, moving from peace to armed struggle, a choice that would define the next chapter of his life. That choice led to his arrest. Mandela was charged with treason and sentenced to life in prison. He would spend 27 years behind bars, most of it on the harsh Robben Island. The government thought that by locking him away, they could make the world forget him. But they did the opposite. He became the world's most famous political prisoner, a global symbol of the fight against injustice. His imprisonment only amplified his message. And when he was finally released in 1990, he didn't emerge as a man seeking revenge. He emerged as a statesman, ready to negotiate a peaceful end to apartheid. He led South Africa through a delicate transition, saving it from a civil war and becoming its first democratically elected president, a testament to his incredible capacity for forgiveness and reconciliation. Now, let's shift gears to a figure who is, to this day, one of the most recognizable and controversial symbols of revolution in the world. His face is on t-shirts, posters, and murals from Havana to Helsinki. I'm talking about Ernesto Che Guevara. Unlike the others we've discussed, Che wasn't fighting to free his own homeland. He was an Argentinian doctor from a well-to-do family. His revolution was an ideological one. As a young man, he took a motorcycle journey across South America, and what he saw, the poverty, the hunger, the exploitation of the masses by American corporations and local oligarchies, it changed him forever. The doctor decided the continent didn't need medicine, it needed a cure for injustice, and he believed that cure was armed revolution. His path led him to Mexico, where he met a young Cuban lawyer with a fiery passion and a plan to overthrow the US-backed dictator Fulgencio Batista. That lawyer was Fidel Castro. Chi joined Castro's small band of rebels and they sailed to Cuba to start a revolution. Chi wasn't just a soldier, he was a brilliant guerrilla tactician and a ruthless disciplinarian. He played a crucial role in the 2-year-long guerrilla war that, against all odds, succeeded in toppling the Batista regime. When the rebels marched into Havana in 1959, Che was a hero of the Cuban Revolution, second only to Fidel himself. But for Che, the revolution wasn't just about Cuba. He saw Cuba as the first step in a worldwide Marxist uprising against imperialism. He served in the new Cuban government for a while, as head of the National Bank and Minister of Industries. But he was a revolutionary at heart, not a bureaucrat. He famously declared that his duty was to make 2, 3, many Vietnams. He left Cuba to try and ignite revolutions elsewhere, first in the Congo and then in Bolivia. It was in Bolivia where his journey ended. He was captured by Bolivian forces, aided by the CIA, and executed. But in death, his legend only grew, transforming him into a timeless, romantic, and deeply divisive icon of rebellion and anti-establishment ideals. Finally, let's go back in time, back to the early 19th century, to a man whose revolutionary ambition was so vast it covered an entire continent. We're talking about Simon Bolivar, known simply as El Libertador, the Liberator. Born into a wealthy Creole family in Venezuela, then a part of the Spanish Empire, Bolivar was educated in Europe. He was there when Napoleon was reshaping the continent, and he was deeply inspired by the ideals of the American and French revolutions. He saw a future where South America was not a collection of colonies exploited by Spain, but a unified federation of free nations. It was a dream of breathtaking scale. Bolivar's military campaigns are the stuff of legend. They were audacious, brutal, and spanned a territory larger than Alexander the Great's empire. He led his armies through dense, disease-ridden jungles and over the freezing, treacherous peaks of the Andes Mountains, a feat many considered impossible. He fought against the Spanish crown for 2 decades, a relentless struggle of victories and devastating defeats. He was exiled multiple times, saw his fledgling republics collapse, but he never ever gave up. His persistence was superhuman. He was driven by that singular vision of a free and united South America. Through his leadership, his strategic genius, and his unwavering will, Bolivar played a key role in the liberation of not 1, not 2, but 6 modern-day countries: Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Panama, and the country that was named in his honor, Bolivia. His dream of a grand, unified Gran Colombia ultimately fractured due to regional infighting and political rivalries, a failure that haunted him until his death. But his legacy is undeniable. He shattered the chains of 3 centuries of Spanish rule and redrew the map of an entire continent. He is, without a doubt, the George Washington of South America, a revolutionary titan whose shadow looms large over the history of half the hemisphere. So there you have it. 5 leaders, 5 different paths, 5 revolutions that fundamentally changed the world we live in. From Washington's principled stand for a republic, to Gandhi's soul-shaking peaceful resistance, to Mandela's journey from prisoner to president, Che's ideological crusade, and Bolivar's continent-spanning dream. Their stories are complex, inspiring, and sometimes controversial. They show us that history isn't a straight line. It's a messy, passionate, and often violent struggle between the world that is and the world that could be. These leaders were the catalysts, the ones who dared to push humanity forward, for better or for worse. The world we inhabit today was carved out by their actions. The democracy in the United States, the independence of India, the post-apartheid society of South Africa, the political landscape of Latin America, these are all direct echoes of the revolutions they led. Reflecting on their lives forces us to ask big questions. What makes a leader? When is revolution justified? And what is the price of freedom? Their legacies are not just history, they are living, breathing debates that continue to shape our politics and our societies. They remind us that even in the face of impossible odds, change is possible. But these are just 5 stories out of countless others. History is filled with men and women who fought for change, whose names we might not know as well. So, I want to hear from you. Who are the revolutionary leaders that inspire you? Was there someone from your country's history or a figure you read about that changed your perspective? Let me know in the comments below. Let's continue the conversation and learn from each other. Thanks for watching, and remember to question everything.